Hello and welcome to Film Seizure. This week we are doing the second week of Coen Brothers Month. But first off, my name is H.I. McDonough, but you can call me Chuck. With me, as always, we have Jeff Arbuckle. Say hi, Jeff Arbuckle.
Hi, Jeff Arbuckle. Hey, guys. How's it going, everybody?
And Jason Dammit Oliver. Hi, Jason Dammit.
I'm little Nathan Jr.
So, yeah, as previously mentioned, we are in the second week of Coen Brothers Month, where we are covering the first four films of the wonderful career of the Coen Brothers. And this week we are talking about a wonderful oddball comedy called Raising Arizona.
Yeah, I think this is probably the one of all the movies, at least for this month, and maybe to a certain extent, anything. Well, yeah, pretty much anything before Fargo. This is probably the movie that most people have seen and not realized it was them. If that makes sense.
100%. Before the Coen Brothers made their name, like legitimately in the of the universe, not just critically, nobody knew that Raising Arizona was the Coen Brothers.
Right.
And they discovered it later, but they'd probably seen it in a
or
lot
they
of
didn't,
cases.
or they didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think even today they go back, and if people start, like listing off Coen Brother movies, they may start with Barton Fink or something, and then, but they wouldn't even, and you would say Raising Arizona, and most people would probably be like, was that one of theirs?
Maybe. I don't know most people. To me, anyone who would consider themselves a Coen Brothers fan will obviously know this is them by now, I would think. But yeah, there are probably people out there, like my mother, who loves Fargo, thinks it's hilarious, that probably doesn't know that Raising Arizona is one of theirs, and maybe doesn't even know the full breadth of their work.
Well, this is Raising Arizona is definitely on the very far end of the zany spectrum for them, right? So they're off kilter. Everything they make is a little off kilter, but this is definitely, when you think of like screwball comedy, this is the absolute end of the spectrum for the Coen Brothers. They've done a few things in that spectrum, like Hudsucker Proxy, The Big Lebowski, Oh Brother, The Lady Killers, probably the big ones. Bout of Buster Scruggs for sure. But this is the zaniest fucking thing they've done by even a mile over those movies.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And how weird is it that their first two films basically set the bookends?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have one end of the spectrum with Blood Simple, which is fairly straightforward, save a couple characters and moments, and Raising Arizona, which it has a straightforward story, but nothing else about it is straightforward.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Everything else they've done falls somewhere in the middle of those two movies as far as tone goes. Yep.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. So this was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I probably saw this when I was 12. I don't know if I should have, but it was somewhere in that late 80s time frame where I caught it on HBO, and I just love it. Like Nick Cage, and I still love his performance now, but for a young kid, how outlandish and cartoonish everything was. And then, not to jump too far ahead, but the fight scene in the house with John Goodman was like my favorite thing ever when I was a kid. It's just so great. And then come to find out later, as Jeff had spoken about earlier, that my favorite directors also made this movie. It was pretty cool. But I don't want to take up too much time. What's your relationship with this one, Jason?
I don't even know. It's funny. I can't even tell you the first time I saw this movie. I definitely didn't see it as a kid, though. But it was an early one for me. But I might have actually, no, that's not right. I probably saw this sometime after I saw Fargo for the first time.
That makes sense, I think. For a lot of people, probably it makes sense.
definitely around like the Fargo Lebowski era is when I discovered Raising Arizona, because again, like I'm pretty sure, I think I discussed this last week, but Miller's Crossing was definitely the first one I ever saw, but I didn't know it was a Coen brother movie, and I didn't know the Coen name until I saw Fargo, and that's when I started to go backward. And I just kind of picked them off. And it was probably sometime around the time when I was working at the video store with Jeff, or with Jeff's brother, I should say, is when I probably rented it and watched it. And I mean, obviously loved it, but I knew it. I've always known it as a Coen Brothers film, if that makes sense, right?
You picked it up as a Coen Brothers film, not had seen it before. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I just didn't grow up with it, but immediately loved it.
Right.
And love it to this day. It's one of those movies. It's like Aliens. I put it in and I can just let it run, and I'll watch it at any point in time in the story. Right? It's just such a it's perfect scenes. Right? It is a movie that is most definitely best appreciated as a whole, but but it also could be taken so beautifully in just 5 to 10 minute scenes that work perfectly as their own stories in a lot of ways too.
Right.
It's vignette almost in that regard, but it all also builds on each other, and it boils to a conclusion that is just completely insane and fun.
Jeff, did you see this one? I can't remember what you said. You may have mentioned this last week, but
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I've seen this one a few times. So I'm pretty sure I probably saw it on cable, 88, 89, something like that. I definitely remember commercials for it. And I remember things like, son, you got a panty on your head.
Yeah.
That's a great line for a kid to say something kind of raunchy and funny, but not be raunchy, and not very funny if you say it all the time. I probably have done that.
It's funny because that line has somehow become sort of symbolic of the Coen style in a lot of ways. I mean, it's even been used in the TV show, right? Like, so people who are pastiching the Coens use it intentionally to make a callback to the Coens. That's become, I think, in a lot of ways, their calling card. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so I mean, like, I definitely and I definitely remember, and Jason, this was probably around the time that you saw it too. I definitely remember in the mid 90s it coming out. You guys remember the like whenever 20th Century Fox would go into its catalog, and they would release like $8 VHS copies of their movies, and they had that maroon Fox favorites across the top.
Yeah,
I bought one of Raising Arizona. So yeah, I mean, it was something that I definitely I definitely had. And
I should have specified. I said the TV show. I meant the Fargo TV show, if that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
I almost asked, but then I figured that's what you meant.
Yeah. But for our listening audience, just in case there's some confusion there's not a Raising Arizona TV show, although I would watch one if there was.
I would watch one. Are you kidding? Fox not doing this in the 90s with like, oh shit, what's the guy's name? What's the guy's name who was on Wings and he was in Sideways?
Steven Weber?
No. The big dumb guy.
Oh my God, Ed. His name was Ed in the show, wasn't it?
Shit, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, like I can't believe they didn't have that show on for like 4 weeks and then instantly canceled for being shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm surprised he wasn't done as a Fox show, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Fox, especially in the early days, were trying to find a way to just because I mean, remember, it was Tracy Ullman show, Duet, and Married with Children, and that was it.
So you're saying we'd have Thomas Hayden Church's Hi McDonough
Uh-huh.
because that would kind of work.
The problem with that is, it, like you said, Jeff, and I don't know if you're talking about Raising Arizona, but it'd be canceled.
Oh yeah,
it would all be pissed.
Yeah, well, probably not though, because a lot of those Fox 90 shows were fucking ass.
I don't know, man. I saw a question, and it was like, if you could have one TV show come back for a year, and I sat and thought about it for quite a long while. It's like, well, I love Breaking Bad, but that ended well. You know, all the shows I love because they ended well, right?
Yeah.
But Strange Luck on Fox with D.B. Sweeney. It's like my favorite.
I don't even
show
remember that show.
I want the other DB Sweeney show, Harsh Realm. Remember Harsh Realm?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Harsh Realm was like a major. It came out around the time where all the simulated reality was like a big deal. Yeah.
God,
So
I don't
anyway,
remember any of that. I already know what I want too. Mission Hill. I want more Mission Hill.
Fair.
Period. We all got to mention our favorite random. Like,
it's not my favorite show ever, but it's one I want back. But,
right. I'm just saying it's like our.
I kind of feel like the Fox show Raising Hope was kind of Raising Arizona.
I don't even remember that show.
It had Garrett Dillahunt on it. And I never watched it, but it also had Martha Plimpton and some other people, and it was like 88 episodes. And I remember it kind of had like a backwards Southern kind of slant to it, and it was like an untraditional family. I feel like that was their Raising Arizona.
No, fair.
I mean, I guess, but no.
So
but,
people understand that. Let's talk about what Raising Arizona.
So like, just going back to what I was saying, it's like, you know, it was something that I was absolutely aware of. The lines, the biker picking up the baby seat and sticking. I mean, like, there were a lot of things that are like kind of etched on my memory, even from like commercials when the movie came out. So yeah, I mean, like, that's I've always been aware of it. But again, even when Fargo came out, I don't know if I would have told you, oh yeah, no, that's the same guys who did those two movies.
Right.
You know, but again, as I explained last week too, it's like, it's not like I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan, even though I like.
You will be. You will.
Thank you, Yoda.
Thank you for picking up on that.
You weren't quite scary enough, but we can fix it in post. We can bring in Frank Oz. But anyway, no, I still find this movie extremely funny. I was laughing my ass off all the way through this movie. Yeah.
It's full of laughs.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing actually, because I've seen it so many times. I know when everything's coming, but I feel like I forget a bit of the nuance of everything that's coming. Right? If that doesn't make sense. Like, I know all the plot points.
I have an example of that.
Yeah, and my example is the scene is that whole sequence with William Forsythe and John Goodman when they have kidnapped the baby and they rob the convenience store. Like, there are so many funny moments in that scene that just layer on top of one another, and it kills me every time. And again, that's like a little 8-minute short film,
right,
that I could just watch over and over again. You could sit anybody in front of that and they would laugh their fucking ass off, and that without any context. That's just good comedy, good storytelling.
Well, it's also a lot of like the most perfect casting across the board too. I mean, like, people don't really realize that Nicolas Cage was already a pretty big, like, people thought he was a pretty damn good actor even at this point in his career, and this was relatively early. Like, you know, 5 years before this, he's in Fast Times at Ridgemont High as Nick Coppola.
Yeah,
and he had already done what was he in? Peggy Sue Got Married.
He was. The year
Yes.
before.
And then Moonstruck, which was an Oscar winner.
That's the same year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this. So it's like, I mean, like he was already ramping up to, what we eventually saw with Leaving Las Vegas, being able to pull off big, big roles.
But much like the Coen brothers, he was doing these big roles, like personality-wise,
Yes.
in Raising Arizona and Vampire's Kiss, which came out, I believe, the year after. Those are emblematic of like what you think of as crazy Nick Cage.
Yeah.
And he was doing that very early in his career, too.
Yeah, I mean, because even in like Valley Girl, I think he had kind of a big swing for the fences too.
Sure.
In that,
Yeah.
Which that whole movie is probably a swing for the fences, but it's one that's kind of bore out, to be one that people like watching today. Though I can't say, I don't know if I've ever seen it, but I know that people talk about it still, enough.
I'm taking away your Nick Cage card, Jeff. Haven't seen Valley Girl?
Well, okay, sure, fine. But
I would lose my card too.
I knew that he went by his birth name in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So
I mean, think about like the first 8 years of his career. Just the names he worked with. Of course, a lot of this has to do with being a Coppola, but he worked with Amy Heckerling, Francis Ford Coppola, twice, Alan Parker, and Birdie. That was the same year as Cotton Club. He then the Coens, Norman Jewison, and then fucking David Lynch in 1990 in Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
I mean, that is insane. Like the guy obviously was someone that auteurs wanted to work with, not just directors.
I remember a time in the 90s maybe early 90s, where people were questioning whether Nick Cage was a good actor, if he was making good because people knew his name was Coppola.
That's weird because like even when by the time he was doing things like The Rock and Con Air, it's like this is him cashing the paycheck for the Oscar.
Obviously that's different. Like by that point,
but he was also a box office draw too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember grumblings. I don't know what it was on, and maybe I'm not making it up. I remember there being people but I always liked him. And again, this may be the first movie I saw him in, because I watched a lot of those other films before I was 10.
I mean, I would say that he really didn't start becoming what we know of him as being sort of a parody of himself until he started making the action movies, right? Like,
I would even argue saying that Leaving Las Vegas was the moment that he kind of folded in on himself.
I agree.
And became a parody of himself, but while also doing it
because
perfectly and then moving forward.
Immediately after that, he did The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. And I mean, those three are just three of the most ridiculous action movies you could honestly ever show anyone.
But they're also really good.
Yeah, they're fun as hell. Yeah, no doubt.
He's not always the best part of
my favorite Michael Bay movie, easily by a mile and a half.
But Nick Cage isn't exactly the best part in any of those movies either.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, he's the straight guy to Connery. He's the hero while Malkovich is the heavy.
And Buscemi steals that fucking movie, even though he's only in it for like 8 minutes or something.
And then of course, Face Off, it's the premise, right? So he is playing his part.
Face Off he's absolutely bonkers in that.
Yeah,
like truly. Yeah.
I need to revisit that. I remember I didn't buy it. I just didn't buy it.
Oh, what? You didn't buy the concept that they could take your face off? Take your face off.
No, I didn't.
Remember after Face Off, was it after it that John Travolta did Broken Arrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Broken Arrow came out before Face Off.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Broken Arrow was John Woo's second movie.
Those are both Woo, though, right?
Yeah. John Woo's first three movies in the States were Hard Target, Broken Arrow, and then Face Off.
Awesome. And I remember one of them, so maybe you can clear this up, and then we'll talk about Raising Arizona. Either Nick Cage or, I can't even remember his damn name right now, Travolta was really terrible at pretending to be the other one. And one of them is really good at it.
Cage is better at acting like Travolta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much-
Actually, that I think that is something that I think even John Travolta told him, that you're better at being me than I am.
Well, Travolta was like acting like Nicolas Cage acting like Travolta. It was
Yes.
weird.
Yeah. And whereas
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage was just it's Nicolas Cage, man. I mean,
He had more nuance, even though he was the same person.
right, and he was like he was watching Travolta. Like I've
But
got
here's the problem here. Here's the problem though, is like Nicolas Cage, he got to play like the hero as when he was playing Travolta, right? So it's
Yeah.
a little more toned down anyway. Travolta had to be the more over the top one because he was playing the over the top Nicolas Cage villain,
yes.
right?
Right.
So he actually Travolta had the heavier lift, if you ask me.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. All right. So back to so we're gonna get back onto the highway here of Raising Arizona.
Yep.
Yeah. So this was surely probably very easily the first movie I ever saw with Holly Hunter in it.
Gotta be.
Very young Holly Hunter.
But she has one of my biggest laughs two of my biggest laughs of this whole movie. And the first is in the opening dialogue. So the movie basically opens with Nicolas Cage. It kind of opens like Blood Simple, right? With a kind of a voiceover, let's set the stage sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is talking about how he was basically a criminal, and he was trying to stand up and fly straight, but it was hard with that son of a bitch Reagan in the White House. Yeah. And he talks about how basically he would rob a convenience store, go back to jail, rob a convenience store, go back to jail, all of that. But in the in-between time, as he's getting booked, Holly Hunter is the processing officer or whatever. Yeah. And she caught his eye. And when he noticed that she was really, really upset over the fact that an engagement got called off, he caught her eye by just being nice to her. And when he gets released, he goes immediately back to propose to her.
Well, he gets pissed off because her fiance leaves her.
Yeah.
And he says, you tell that no good son of a bitch or whatever it is, he could come find me at the whatever the prison is. He goes
Maricopa County Jail.
So you tell him I'll be waiting for him.
Yeah.
Well, it's just funny because all of those moments, like he's a damn fool. He's been processed so many times. It's like he's been on 11 dates with Ed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know, like those are their dates, is every time he gets processed and they get to know each other better. It's kind of funny.
Right.
How that works out.
Right. And so like, and he's always good at getting through the parole board, which are just some old fogies who are just kind of there going through the motions.
You wouldn't lie to me, would you?
Yeah. It's like, you're not just telling us what we want to hear. Well, yes, sir. I am telling you what you want to hear because I am going to be on the straight and narrow or whatever. You know, it's like he's totally playing them, but also at the same time, he's kind of an idiot too, right? Like he is just being simple, and it's working because the old people aren't complicated. So, you know, he keeps going in and out. And so he talks about how he and Edwina, Ed, they get married and they're gonna start making a family. And, but, you know, no matter how hard they try, it doesn't quite work out because Ed is barren. And this is my first big laugh that Holly Hunter has. They go see the doctor, and while the voiceover is talking about how, you know, like how she is so fertile and so beautiful and so young, while she's like bawling her eyes out, is just hilarious because she's like everything opposite of what he's explaining her as in that exact moment, where she's just a fucking wreck, and it's great, and I love it.
Her insides are a rocky place where my seed can find no purchase.
Yes.
That is just great writing. There's a few things I want to point out here that I love. This is a Coen thing, and they do it a lot. But there's somebody off screen who delivers a joke, and it's the same kind of joke over and over again, because it fits the scene, and it is almost like you're waiting for it. You're expecting.
Don't forget the prince, Ed.
Exactly, it's that guy. It's the best. Every time he's getting checked in or processed, and Ed's taking the picture, there's somebody off screen who's telling Ed not to forget something, and it's the best.
And then when they get married, the same guy is there and he yells, "Don't forget the bouquet, Ed."
Yep. Don't forget the bouquet. Yep. Fantastic.
Yes. That is, even that stuff like her loins are a rocky place and get no purchase. This character would never talk like that. He's too dumb to talk like that.
No.
But the way that they write it is just, it's perfect.
This
fits.
This is we talked about this in Oh Brother. I think if there's a movie that this has of their collection of films, if there's one that has like the most kinship to Raising Arizona, it's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And it's because of that Preston Sturges type dialogue, right? These seemingly unintelligent, sort of backward bumpkins who are able to speak with this high articulation. That's very much an old Preston Sturges style. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, there are a few other Oh Brother moments, like Merry Christmas, when Cage wakes up, and instead of yelling, "Oh, my hair," like he would have in Oh Brother, he yells, "Merry Christmas."
Yeah.
Just funny. And that, I mean, I don't know. But yeah, so they get out and get married, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Prior to that, they do show John Goodman and William Forsythe as members of the Circle.
Oh yeah, they're in group counseling in prison.
They're in group counseling with Hyde.
Yeah.
So we get to see them just a little bit. There's some funny dialogue in those scenes as well. Like the one guy saying, "Sometimes I get to menstrual real hard."
Yeah, right. Yeah, because he feels like he's a woman on the inside. Yeah.
Yep. There's Jason told me to be careful of reading too much into this, but there's a lot of gender flipping ideas in this movie, and ideas about birth and having babies. Like Ed is an Edwina. Him saying he has a menstrual cycle. There's a few other ones, and I know they're not serious because this movie is a comedy. It's just funny to look for those little things.
Well, I mean, they probably are writing a little bit to that by saying, we're just going to take somebody who you think one thing out of and then just just invert it. It's probably no deeper than that, but the easiest way to do that is with gender and gender role.
I think you're probably right, Jeff. In fact, I think that lends some credence to them saying basically that they wanted to make the movie that was complete opposite to Blood Simple when they made this, right? They wanted to have, even right down to like kind of a dastardly crime, but for the tone to be completely opposite and for everyone to be super likable,
right,
rather than unlikable, even though they might do unlikable things, right?
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's and it's there's in a sort of way, and I don't know if it's maybe just the location more than anything, but I admit that to a certain extent, I also get a little bit of the vibes from like National Lampoon's Vacation.
Ah, okay, yeah.
With like Cousin Eddie and his family.
Yeah, like sort of like when Frances McDormand and her husband show up to meet little Nathan Jr.
Yeah, Sam McMurray. And right, and it's like, he's dressed in clothing that is not period accurate. It's loud. It's polyester. It's Cousin Eddie, really, except for he's a smarter Cousin Eddie with maybe just as low scruples, whereas Nicolas Cage is the dumber Clark Griswold with higher scruples, maybe. I was kind of seeing, and again, maybe it's just like the location of the, just going to the double wide out in the middle of nowhere in the Southwest, but it's, it's, there are visual cues, and I mean, it's just, again, it's using tropes and various things like that to a perfect degree. If that
it's a very cheerful movie in general.
It is not mean-spirited at all.
Never.
I wouldn't even say that Blood Simple was all that mean-spirited, even though it's a much more serious and deadlier film. Yeah.
You're right. The wide open spaces, the brightness, the sun, the cheery characters, the big characters, like everybody reacts in extreme ways, and it just feels very inviting. The whole damn movie, right?
It feels a little bit like a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon.
Yeah. I was definitely going to get
cartoonish.
There. It is absolutely like a cartoon. It's like Woody Woodpecker's on his fucking tattoo, Yeah. I mean, it definitely has that old cartoon feel. Most certainly.
All right, so take us from the from the point where they find out that Ed is barren.
Well,
they find out about the Arizona Quints. And hell, you know who Nathan Arizona is. I don't have to tell you about him. But the Arizona Quints, the Unpainted Arizona owner, he sells unpainted furniture, kills me. He's got an empire of it. And they had quintuplets, him and his wife. And he jokingly mentioned to the newspaper reporter that it's more than we can handle. And Holly Hunter, Ed, she reads that and she takes it to heart, and she says they have more than they can handle, and we have none. We can take one of those Arizona babies off their hands, and that's what they decide to do. And I believe that ends the cold open with them driving off into the sunset to go steal a baby.
That's a long cold open.
It's 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it ends with hollowed out title
of it. Yeah.
Very similar to Dead Zone.
Cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's something else I thought about while watching this movie. And maybe I'm reaching, but I don't know. I wanted to ask you guys what you thought. This is kind of a perfect satire of Americana too, in the sense that you have people above and people below. Everybody is stupid, but in different ways, and the people below are obviously stupider. And they also see what somebody else has and say, "We don't have that. We're going to take it." And it's very satirical in the sense that I think it is very American in that sense.
There's a lot of buzzwords too, like family unit, and they like are constantly, or High is constantly using those terms that we as American think is normal.
Right. It's a societal pressure of what you should be. You have to have children. You have to have a family. You have to earn at a certain wage. You have to live a certain life. And then, I mean, that's perfectly illustrated too when Frances McDormand is just overwhelming Ed with just like all the things she needs to do to take care of her kid. I mean, it's like this crazy checklist of like all these shots and all of these, setting up a savings plan for their education. It's just like, it's like, you haven't done all this stuff yet. It's like that person, and I've been this person. I try not to be this person when they say they haven't seen something and you're like, you haven't seen that movie before? She's like that person on steroids, and it's all about baby shit.
Much higher stakes, right? Much higher stakes.
Right.
But that's great because that is very, I don't want to call it familial or whatever, but while she's getting assaulted with all this stuff that she has to be doing, she's looking to High and saying, have we done that?
Yeah.
Have we do that?
And High is wide-eyed.
She knows damn well that they haven't.
Right.
He's looking for a release valve.
Shifting blame, yeah.
You can see like High's hair's getting crazier with every question. He's whipping his head around so much.
The way they build up his, because this is, the movie is not all in his head, but all of this stuff is almost all in his head. We're seeing like a representation almost always of what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like every scene is magnified by his inner turmoil.
Sure. Absolutely. He gives voice to it through the inner dialogue. Yeah, absolutely. It's his movie for sure, and we're experiencing his existential crisis.
Right. For sure. But before we get to that scene with them, they have to go take one of the quints, right?
Yep, they do.
Arizona quints. And this scene I find particularly hilarious because
it's super zany and funny. Yep.
I assume it's hard to tell, and I think he's trying to get a feel for each of the babies to know which one to take. This is setting them in weird places and they're wandering off, and he's freaking out.
Well, and then of course,
and they're all completely amicable babies too, which is
yes, they're super awesome.
Yeah, well, and they all and at some point, or after he makes the decision, he's like, or no, he decides not to take one.
Yeah,
because as he says, they were crying and all over me. It was kind of horrifying.
But Ed's not having.
I don't see no baby High. I don't see no baby.
Get back up there and get me a baby High. So he does. He ends up going back and he takes Nathan Jr.
Or he thinks.
He thinks. Yeah, we don't know for sure.
Nobody knows which one of those babies is taken, really.
He's like, I'm pretty sure I got the best one. Pretty sure it's Nathan Jr.
Yeah. What's funny, they were all lined up in the bed when he got there with their names over their heads, but he totally messed up that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. He could have known if he just went in there and grabbed Nathan Jr. But there's another funny thing with Holly Hunter here when she is crying hysterically and saying, I love him so much.
I love him so much.
Just her face in this moment, like how quick, like, I don't know if it's making fun of how quickly people fall in love with their babies or not, but it's just hysterical.
Yeah. Well, because it's a little bit of, because it's also a little bit of desperation. It's a little bit that she's now broken the law. And so she's snapped as well. It's a little bit of a lot of things, I think.
Yeah, at this point, she had actually left the police force, right?
Right. She had quit after, because once she found out she was barren, she didn't really have much of a zeal for any kind of life whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The salad days are over.
Yep.
Right?
The salad days.
Salad days, baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, like right before we do need to make mention of this because when the title is showing, Carter Burwell's score really kicks in.
Oh yeah, and
it's freaking amazing and wacky as hell.
It's like that first real big yodel, right? When
it's country yodeling. Yeah,
and it's just crazy, like coming off, because we didn't talk about his score of Blood Simple, which was actually really good for that film. It's very understated, but it's really good. There are a little bit of zany moments to the score in Blood Simple, but Raising Arizona is like off the chain and awesome. Mm-hmm. So they take Nathan Jr. back to their little double wide trailer. They have some conversations. I can't remember exactly what.
Well,
they talk about. Go ahead.
They bring Nathan Jr. back. They've got a sign up that says "Welcome home, son." And then and High really wants to take a family photo.
Right.
But Holly Hunter, Ed's anxieties are kicking in. Yeah.
It's like, you're going to help me with this. You're going to do this. You're going to be home for this, right?
And meanwhile, every bit of happiness, because he also is kind of showing them around, where it's like,
yeah, yep.
Here's where your mom and pa are going to eat their dinner, and this is where you're going to watch the football games, and and it's like all of these things. And then,
what does it say? 2 hours maximum, unless it's educational or football.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then he says, and then he wants to take the photo, and he starts setting it up, and all the while he's setting up the timer, and she's going on and on. It's like, you're going to help me with this, right? You're going to do this, right? You're going to be like this, and he's trying to. It's like, hey, look at the, it's like,
hey, the
it's
picture's
about to go
coming.
off. And you can hear it counting down, basically, like clicking down, and it just all the while she just won't let up, and you can just see all of the joy of life draining from his face,
and then captured in the photograph, because his face is completely dazed and forlorn.
Yep. So good.
Oh, it's good. And it's also kind of representative of their characters, right? I mean, Hai lives in the moment. He's very much about the now. Ed is not. She's traditionally the more responsible of the two. And she thinks about the future, but she also thinks about the ideal. And her ideal isn't necessarily Hai's ideal, but Hai wants it to be, right?
Right.
So it's that kind of tug and pull that their entire relationship is, and now they've kidnapped a baby.
Good idea. And this is funny too, because within Blood Simple and Raising Arizona, we've already seen two of the plots that will be used over and over and over again in Coen Brothers film: a botched murder attempt or a kidnapping. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes the two go together. But it's funny that
she kidnapped herself, dude.
Yeah, she kidnapped herself, dude. But like Fargo, they just all have some element of this. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so also what ends up happening after the picture is snapped, basically the second act is literally birthed from the ground.
Yep.
Well, there's your birth motif for sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's like a birth and zombies all at the same time.
Right. And up comes John Goodman, who has tunneled his way out of jail with William Forsythe.
This is the first of many times that John Goodman screams like a crazy person in a Coen film.
And yeah, he does it a few more times in this
sure
movie.
Does. This set the bar, though. It almost became like a thing. If we put John Goodman in a movie, he has to scream.
Right. This is he had already been on Roseanne, right? This is not
Roseanne didn't start. I think Roseanne started a year or two later.
Did it?
Yeah, I think so.
I guess it doesn't really matter. I know it's early Goodman, but I think he was somewhat established at this point. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think he was kind of a character actor and kind of was here and there before this. But yeah.
But he is awesome in this movie. He is awesome. He and William Forsythe both are awesome.
He was in True Stories the year before.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
He was in Chud. He was cop in Diner in Chud, guys. Revenge of the Nerds. He was Coach Harris. I mean, if I gotta probably say this is. I mean, the Big Easy I haven't seen. He played a detective in that, but I have to think Raising Arizona is the first thing he really got to bite his teeth into.
Good for him.
And it shows. Yeah.
Good for him. So yeah, next it's all rainy, so they have to steal a car. We have a pomade sighting, which is more brother.
Sure do.
Kind of stuff.
Kills me, man. Because, all right, so William Forsythe, who's so baby-faced, he's almost unrecognizable as William Forsythe.
If it wasn't for that gap.
Yeah, right. And John Goodman, they crawl out of the mud, and they go find a public restroom to clean themselves up. What is cleaning themselves up? It's just like getting a can of pomade and combing, slicking their hair.
Yeah, and just
It's a
gobs
disaster.
it's gobs and gobs of pomade.
And they look at each other for approval to make sure they look good. Meanwhile, they smell like fucking shit because they hit a sewer line,
which we don't know yet.
which we don't know yet, but we
Right.
do know they look ridiculous.
Right. Yes, and he because like because like they're so, it's almost like they're so excited to be out that they don't know what to do other than to get their hair fixed. And then it's like, it's not going to cover the what we think is mud on their clothes.
Right.
It's not going to cover what we think is mud on their faces. It's only going to comb their hair.
Oh, it's the epitome of lipstick on a pig. I mean,
right. They've used so much that shit ain't going to come out very easily the next day.
It's too good.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever used pomade. I do often, and it is not easy to wash out.
I use beard wax. I don't have much use for pomade.
That's true. That's fair. I mean, do you use beard wax or beard cream? I like beard.
Most of the time it's oil. I use.
Fair enough. Is it tea tree oil?
A lot of the times it is.
Fantastic. I bet you smell fantastic, Chuck.
I do smell fantastic.
Because I have some tea tree beard cream. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
Good stuff. It's good. Makes you feel like you could be out in public.
Yeah, that's what they use the pomade for. You just made their argument. It makes them feel like they could be out in public.
Yeah. But it is also something that we find out later, that our demonic bike guy from fucking Road Warrior comes along and is able to smell them out with it.
Yeah. Well, that happens in Oh Brother too. The one guy sniffs the air and he can tell that they're around. Yep. I'm almost positive.
Yep, he does.
So I think the next scene actually is after they. Oh no, they actually, Gail and Evel Snotes are their names, show up at High's house and wakes them up while they're sleeping, watching the baby, to which High yells, "Merry Christmas," which is very funny. I mentioned that earlier. But immediately, again, Ed kicks into mother mode. Like, what? Look at the hour. Like, she's gone from "we just stole a baby" to "I've had kids for 6 months." All that other stuff is behind her now. Now she's just protecting her family unit. But it's Gail and Evel. They've shown up because they were buddies with High, and as is often the case in these movies, when someone escapes from prison, they go to someone else they know that it has left prison to find the next gig, right? Almost always the case, I guess. That's what I did when I escaped.
Yeah, the first thing you did was you came over to our place, and it's like, because we all served time in the clink.
Yeah, I worried I put you guys to sleep with your silence there after.
Well, Chuck was like, "What's the next thing?" And we're like, "Well, you want to join this?" We were like, "Well, you want to join this podcast?"
Yeah. We're heisting all the viewers.
Yeah, it's a hayseed bank.
We're stealing time from everybody.
Anyway, so they come over, and right away they are a little bit, I mean, because it also brings out some of the bad part of High. High has gotten the job drilling holes into fucking steel, I think.
Yeah,
that's all he does, and it's and he works for Emmett Walsh. So we got another connection there with the last movie, and he's just basically he's kind of gone into the doldrums of regular grown-up life, but these two knuckleheads show up, and all of a sudden he's kind of back to his pre-Ed days, and he's and they are and I think that Ed is kind of picking up on that too, that he should be thinking the same thing that she's thinking, but he's kind of buying into all of this old
does he have the dream about summoning the biker right before
the next night?
It's the next night. It's not the night that Forsythe and Goodman show up?
Well, it's
I mean, it's after they show up.
It's when he
That's
goes back to bed. Yeah.
So it's all right. So yeah, it's when he goes back to bed. That's when he summons his basically his not so better half.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I was going to say.
Yeah. So well, you're basically at the next. You're basically at the next part of the movie, which is High has a prophecy about this guy who rides a bike.
He's cruel to the little things.
He blows up a bunny or something
with a grenade.
Blows up a bunny with a grenade, and he shoots a lizard off a rock.
Right. And he's cruel to the little things, and he's got his fire comes out of the back of his motorcycle. It's like he literally came from hell.
Mm-hmm.
He's the baser animal instinct side of High, basically.
Right.
Yes.
Right. He's high without a conscience.
Right.
Yeah. And so he has shown up into this town in real life. He really has shown up in town.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because he kind of knows where to go. He's kind of a headhunter. And he knows that
probably
there's
a bounty hunter of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he literally says he's a headhunter though.
Yeah.
But sometimes a baby hunter. And he knows that something is up. The first thing he comes across is the bathroom where John Goodman and William Forsythe was gooping on the hair stuff, and he starts to smell, and you can tell that he is going to start smelling them out, and literally does smell a trail of that to the double wide at one point. But anyway, he goes and meets up with Nathan Arizona, who has put out a $25,000 reward for anybody who returns Nathan Jr. And he basically says, I'll do it, and I'll do it so well that you'll pay me $50,000 or I'll keep the kid.
And I'll beat them up for free.
And I'll beat them up for free.
Yeah.
Right. And basically Nathan's not really having any. He's like, whatever, just find him and I'll pay you, or find it and I'll pay you. I don't really care. It's like, we're not going to make a separate deal is the impression I got. It's like basically Nathan is every bit as hard as nails as the devil rider guy who is, that he's just not over the top about it. He doesn't literally wear what looks to be remains of something as part of his outfit.
Right.
So at this point now you've got Ed wanting to have the classic family unit. She's got friends who have a shit ton of kids, and that scene was a fucking goddamn nightmare in my opinion. Oh my God, I was so angry.
Yeah, so she wants, so Ed wants High to get rid of Goodman and Forsythe, but then because they've got company coming over, they're allowed to stay one more night.
Well, not only that, but they're fugitives.
Right. Well, yeah, but she wants them out. At least, yeah, she said they could stay another night, but they have to leave now because they have company coming, good company, like good folk. Yeah, are coming, and High wants to duck out of that. Because he doesn't really,
I love the way he does that.
Like, I'm just gonna go hang out with boys and knock back a couple Coca-Colas. The way he says it kills me. It's like super rapid fast, and she's like not having any of that, right? So he has to concede.
Well, and also the guy of the company, the couple with their kids, the guy is his boss. On top of that. So that's only reminding him even more of the life that he's not having as much fun with anymore. Yeah.
He shows up. Frances McDormand plays the wife, and what's his name?
Sam McMurray.
Sam McMurray, plays Glenn, his boss.
Speaking of Tracy Ullman.
And it's a total tornado. It's like
the kids are
High is basically seeing his future in these two, and he doesn't like it. The one kid is like writes fart on their wall, and that in some ways is like is the perfect symbol of the hell that Hai has found himself.
They're breaking things. The kid's writing on the wall. The parents are nowhere like saying no to the kids.
This is like the classic parents go to somebody else's house for a vacation.
Yeah.
They're not watching their children anymore. Everyone else that's there is going to watch. You wanted us to come over, you watch our kids.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yep.
I don't do that, by the way.
No, you do not. You do not. No, but this is kind of like the over the top, it's over the top, right? It's everything that these kids could possibly do to make your life hell. They have done it. They break stuff, writing on the walls. They're running around. The parents are annoying because they think their kids are little angels. They're not.
And then we have McMurray telling Pollock jokes.
Pollock
jokes, however he pronounces it. I don't know if he says Pollock, but it's something like Polak, maybe.
Yeah, he fucks up his first joke, and then he tells the second joke, and it's pretty much offensive. And
it comes back later, though.
It does.
I love the way it comes back later.
Yeah.
I love the part though where Hai tries to confide in Glenn. He's like, I don't have anyone else to talk to. Is basically what you get the sense of. He's like, so he starts to confide. He's like, I'm worried. I'm scared of the future. I don't know what my life is. He says a lot. He really kind of bears himself to Glenn. And Glenn, you think for a moment, is going to have some like good advice for him, because he actually kind of like he lets down his sort of goofy, happy-go-lucky, happy idiot facade. And he kind of seems to turn a little serious. And then he starts telling, I know exactly what you need. And he starts launching into his pitch for him and Hyde to swap wives.
Dude, it's the second mention in 2 movies about swingers.
Yes. And Hyde's like, what are you talking about? He's like, swingers. What does he say? He says, swingers, wife swapping. Open marriage, man.
So here's one of those things, those little things too. When he punches him, when they go to the view of Sam McMurray on the ground, he's like 15 feet away from Nick Cage. It's like one of those little Coen things that I always forget about that always makes me laugh. It's like he punched him 20 feet.
I like Nick Cage's face when Glenn tells him that his wife Dot thinks he's pretty cute. Hi, Nick Cage. He kind of gets this little bashful but kind of proud of himself face, and then the other shoe drops, and he says, and I could say the same thing about Ed, and the light bulb goes off. It's so good. It's so good.
All that we're missing is the bug zapper.
Yeah.
And an incinerator. Yeah, so
he socks his boss.
Yeah, which is going to get him fired. But he won't tell Ed why. He dances around that. But Ed doesn't really care. She's like, you got fired. It's like you assaulted your boss.
Yeah, she's like, what does that leave me with? And he's like, a man.
Yeah.
I'm a man. I defended your honor, lady.
Yeah, right. And but it's not practical. That doesn't pay the bills. No. That doesn't put Huggies on Nathan Jr.
But you know what does?
Robbery.
Robbing a convenience store.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he gets himself some pantyhose, sticks it over his head, grabs himself the Huggies. He walks up to the counter and basically says, "I'll take these and whatever you happen to have in the register." But the kid working at the all-night convenience store has a fucking hand cannon under the counter.
The kid's hilarious. He's like this ginger freckled, geeky, pimply faced kid.
He's a high school kid working at it.
And he turns into Rambo protecting the
Dirty Harry, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's totally like a fucking 357 Magnum or something. But yeah, but he also, he hit the alarm, so the cops are coming. So Ed is not happy about this, and this is my second big laugh, because he tries to explain what he's doing, to which she said, "But things have changed." As if to just twist the knife a little bit, that things are indeed different than what they used to be.
And then for the next 7 minutes, she just says, "That son of a bitch."
Right.
You son of a bitch.
Right. So eventually, Haig is stuck, basically just running around.
Dude, it's like Point Break. It's like a Point Break chase scene.
Right. So he's running away first from the kid who's got the hand cannon. Then he's running away from a cop who is ridiculously firing at everything.
Yeah.
To try to kill him on the street. Even shooting at people's homes. But then also some dogs got out, and so the dogs are chasing too. And he's running through houses, he's running through backyards. And sure enough, every time he and the cop run through a house, those dogs are coming too. Those dogs are still chasing. And also Holly Hunter is on the chase as well.
I love the symbolism. I love the symbolism of that dog being on a chain and getting loose, which is exactly what High just did. Don't want to make too much of it, but I love that symbolism.
No, it's good.
In that
it's
moment.
Good. I like it.
There's two moments in this scene that crack me up, and one of them is when he finds himself back in the grocery store because he's kind of had to circle back around, and then there's another guy in the grocery store. It looks like the guy running the lotto and the liquor sales who's got a shot. And he points his shotgun right at High, like the High's looking right down the barrel, and it doesn't even faze him. He just stops, looks at it, turns around nonchalantly, and starts running the other way. And then the guy shoots the gun, and it misses him. But then the cop comes and is blocking his passage, and he's got his gun fired at him. It's like, how's High getting out of this one? And he throws the Huggies at the cop. It's a diversion.
And then there's a second cop who gets hit by a shopper who's just running scared for her life too.
Oh yeah, she's like,
he's just getting chased by the dogs and everything. Yeah. What's funny about that scene, and you mentioning
total chaos. I love it.
You mentioning him being nonchalant about it. This is what his life has been. He knows exactly how to handle these situations. Right. It's normal life he fails at.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he gets caught a lot and goes
to jail. He fails at this too.
Yeah, he gets caught a lot and goes to jail, but he's good at this in the respect, in some way. But yeah, it is like cacophony almost, like how much shit is going on here.
I also love little Nathan Jr. in the back seat of the car throughout this scene, pulling his little hoodie down over his face.
So good.
So yeah, he does eventually get away, and that's when he gets the dressing down from Ed.
Well, I want to say one thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The guy he gets in the car with that just screams indefinitely and never turns, like he can't react to anything. He just screams constantly. Is so funny. He has like 7 minutes to turn, and he just like, ah! And it happens on like 3 different occasions that High has to reach over and turn the car. Right. Anyway, yes, Ed catches up to him and he gets his comeuppance. Go ahead, Jeff. My apologies.
And so basically, we're kind of at that impasse now, right?
Yeah.
We've got this is more or less the third act breakup is coming.
Yep.
Because basically she sees that he's never going to grow up, essentially. And that's untenable with their situation, especially because they kidnapped a kid. It's like, and it's a high profile kid, no less. So it's this is a bad situation. She's basically mad and basically done with him. as far as and this is when, at this point, now he's kind of ripe for the picking when it comes to John Goodman and William Forsythe being able to talk him into basically robbing this hayseed bank where all the farmers will come in.
Yeah. Before that though, is it before that? You might be right. That might be, because what happens soon thereafter is
the next morning.
The next morning,
Glenn
yeah.
shows
when
up.
Sam McConnell shows. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So Glenn says. So Glenn then shows up because, like, at this point, like, High is like, this is all I can do. So he starts writing a goodbye note.
Right. Yeah.
And basically preparing to go on this heist.
There's a joke in there. There's like a montage of everybody sleeping, and I forget. Do either of you remember there's someone sleeping in the montage? That's the Coen sting, right? The funny part of the montage. I can't remember what it is. Ugh, stupid.
I'm sorry, I can't off the top of my head.
No, I can't either.
You know how they do that? Like you'll have the montage, and then there'll be that one. It'll be like the dog, and it'll be close up of the dog sleeping, something like that, right?
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember.
I can't remember what it is. Oh well.
Yeah.
So Glenn shows up.
Yeah. So Glenn shows up, and he has figured it out. He has figured out that basically the kid that they have, that both he and his wife were a little bit surprised that Holly Hunter had all of a sudden, is indeed Nathan Arizona Jr. And he wants the kid for himself.
Yeah, this kills me because you can see Goodman putting the pieces together earlier.
Right.
Like when they're like, so you didn't tell us you had a kid. You've been busy. And they're like, they look at the sign, "Welcome home, son." Well, where's he been?
Right.
With his grandparents, and they're both dead.
They're contradicting each other. It's fucking hilarious. Yeah.
And so then they, so then at that point so he's like, yeah, you're going to give me the kid or I'll turn you in, basically. Well, he's been trying to keep him quiet outside because inside, John Goodman and William Forsythe have overheard. And so now they're going to take the kid.
Yeah.
But in order to do so, they got to fuck up that double wide.
Oh, man. It's
one of my favorite fight scenes in a movie ever.
I can't stop laughing every time I see it. I always forget the little things. I always somehow forget the very first thing that happens when he picks up High, or I don't even think he's picked him up. The double wide is just, the ceiling is so low that when he puts his hands above his head to like throw something at John Goodman, he scrapes the tops of his knuckles on the stucco.
On the stucco. Yeah. Oh my God.
That's
the little thing.
Every time it kills me.
That is actually the very first thing I think of when I think of this movie.
Really?
It is impressed upon my mind from when I was a child. It's him lifting up and scraping his fingers. It hurts. It hurts every time I see it.
Because we've all been there, right? We've all gotten into a fight.
We've all scraped our hands on stucco. I guarantee it.
Yes,
something
I
like
certainly
we sure have. Yep.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
It hurts so bad.
And he's doing it forcefully.
Yes.
Like, ugh. But yeah, they break literally every wall. A cage gets thrown through walls. It's like two big men fighting in a small space. Like they have there's no move they can make. Like they're putting their elbows through the walls when they're trying to punch each other. Like they just can't do anything.
There's no room to maneuver at all.
Yeah. And then you have William Forsythe, who has now been infected with babyitis. Right? He's in the room, like holding the baby, like, oh, nothing's going to happen to you, little buddy. Like, it's his moment of, I love him, like Holly Hunter earlier in the movie.
Oh, he crushes hard on that baby later.
But it starts here.
Yep.
1,000% starts here with him. But it's so great. It's just so great. But eventually, John Goodman wins.
Yes, and they tie Nick Cage.
Tie
They tie high, and he goes off, and they go off basically to go through with their heist plan. Meanwhile, we also have gotten that's where oh shit, who plays the biker? I should know this. It's
his name's Leonard Smalls. That's all I know.
Tex Cobb.
Tex Cobb, yes. So Tex Cobb has kind of already kind of tracked the smell of the, so basically everything is starting to converge. And so when they go to the bank, this is one of those things where everybody freeze and get on the ground.
It's so great.
And of course you have the old guy. He's like, but
which you want us to do?
And they're like, what? And it's like,
because if I
freeze, I can't get down.
Right.
And if I get down, then I'll be in motion.
That's about as Coen Brothers is.
Right. And it basically freezes the logic of John Goodman for a minute. And he's like, oh, okay, everybody just get down. And so
he even says later that old man messed up my mojo or something like that.
Yeah, right. I was out of practice. The old man messed me up. Yeah. Right.
There's also a funny moment where Forsyth calls Goodman by his name, and then he tries to cover it up like it's his code name. Oh God, it's too good.
Yeah, I thought you said we could use code name. That's right, my code name.
It's so good.
So
what do? They get the money.
Yep,
that's been loaded with an ink blot.
Yes. So and also meanwhile, Ed has helped get High untied, and they're rushing to the bank also, kind of like with renewed vigor, and they're going to
in a sense
up. Yeah because they don't really have vigor for one another, but they do have vigor to right the wrong of what these two miscreants have done to them.
There's a hilarious scene where Ed is just sitting there and High is pacing with I don't know if it's a rifle or a shotgun, I can't remember. And he's going through this diatribe about how he's going to be a better man. And, it's like, you were right, I was wrong, I'm stupid. And then he cocks the gun and says, let's go get Nathan Jr.
Right. Right. And so he goes and, by the way, both Tex Cobb and John Goodman have been in episodes of Moonlighting. That's fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so they go and they're on their way. Meanwhile, as they were loading up the car for whatever reason, they bring Nathan Jr. out of the car.
Oh God! Well, first they robbed the convenience store. They robbed the bank and the convenience store. And
you got to talk about the bank robbery.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite moment. When Forsyth tells a guy at the before he robs him, he's like grabbing stuff, and he grabs some balloons. He's like, "Ooh, balloons!" He's like, "Do these blow up into funny shapes or anything like that?" And the little man behind the counter is like, "No, not unless round is funny."
Right.
And it's very much like those convenience store, general store scenes in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" It's very much that same deadpan kind of. I wouldn't be surprised if they just found that guy working in that convenience store and put him in the movie, right?
Yeah.
But he ends up robbing the convenience store, and he tells the guy to get on the ground and count to like
800.
Yeah.
800, and then count backwards from that.
And then count backwards from that, and I'm going to come back and check on you.
In 5 minutes, I'm going to come back.
So then, they go out. They for whatever reason put Nathan Jr. on top of the car, and then they're going to leave, and they drive off.
Right. And at that point, they're like, where's Nathan Jr. at? I've had a moment like this, except for Nathan Jr. wasn't a plastic bag. But
it was like your like Chinese takeout or something.
It's like, where's Nathan Jr.? And so they're looking around, and they realize he's not in the car. So they just start screaming.
Oh, it's so good.
And turn around. The whole time they're screaming. John Goodman's punching the top of the
He's
ceiling of the
smashing
car.
the dashboard. He's smashing the top of the hood of the car. It's the best.
Right. And so they get back and they get Nathan Jr. And they're like, oh gosh, it's like, we almost screwed up there. And and also meanwhile the guy inside the convenience store gets to 800 or almost, or it starts
791. He says 791, I think.
Yeah.
Right, and he's like, oh, screw this. He gets up and then sees their car coming back. He's like, oh, and he gets back down and starts counting backwards again from where he left off.
So great.
Yeah.
But then they make the decision, we're not giving this baby up, because in a previous scene in the car, before they rob anything, Forsyth is holding him, and he totally bonds with this baby. He's like, the baby, he says, I think he smiled at me. Like,
yep.
I think he really likes me. And then the baby shits himself on Forsyth, and there's a great exchange.
That's when they have to stop and get the
That's exactly right. That's why they have to stop at the convenience store. Yep.
They didn't even need to rob the convenience store, but they do it for the Huggies. I guess they did need to.
They go there to get Huggies. Yep.
But that's why they bring him into the bank, because Jeff said you weren't sure the reason. When they get there, William Forsythe is like, well, we can't leave him in here, basically. Right. He's like, what is he going to do if we get caught? Like, it's like the baby's got to come with us.
That's great. That's just great.
Yeah. So
then somehow, go ahead.
No. So basically, they leave him outside the car again.
At the bank, yeah.
At the bank. So, at the bank was the first time where they're screaming and they have to go back. And then they did it again, and that's when the old man's like, oh, screw this. And it's all them come back. And it's at that point in time that no, that's
the
not
ink
it.
in
the ink goes off when the baby's still in the middle of the road, because that's when Tex Cobb comes and gets the baby.
But Tex Cobb.
And while that's happening, Cage and Hi and Ed pass them, and they let them know where he left them in the road, and they're all covered in ink and like hysterical and whatever.
Yeah. Right.
And this leads to probably, I don't know if I'm using this word right, but the most earnest line that Hi has in the whole entire film is when they get there, they see the explosion over the hill, and I can't remember his name, the bad dude comes over the hill, and she's like, what is that? And he's like, do you see him too? It's like, I don't know why it gives me chills every time he says it, because it's so like perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because it is like this whole idea of this film being half fantasy and half reality, where everything is really reality, but it's impacted by, like I had mentioned earlier, what's going on in Hi's head. Everything is exaggerated by his feelings.
Right.
But this guy is not. Right? This guy is death on fucking wheels.
Right.
And he's come to take your kid back. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, so this begins he picks up the kid. They ultimately get, I think he shoots their car, blows out both windows, and then, or both the front and the back windows, and eventually
throws a grenade in it.
Throws a grenade in the car. Right. And they have to get out. And this is when, at this point in time, they're now outside, and he comes back to basically kill them.
He's going to beat him up for free.
Right.
He's going to beat him up for free, like he told Nathan Sr. he would.
Exactly. So then, he's just wailing on Hi, and Hi has no, we've not seen him be physical at all. He's got no fighting prowess.
He gets beat up every time he gets in a fight. Yeah.
Right. And so, but he does do one thing. Just as it looks as though um, Leonard Smalls is about to shoot High, he realizes that he has pulled the
grenade pin,
the pin out of a grenade that's strapped to Smalls' body, and he blows up good.
He blows up real good. He's like, oh, and he blows up.
Right.
And just before that, too, one of my favorite lines in the movie, because it's another one of those Coen lines, is when Ed is running away and she runs through the bank, and the old guy goes, "Just lay down on the floor, young missy."
Yeah. You almost wish that the line was, "Don't forget to lay on the floor there, Ed."
Yeah, that would be hilarious. But it's so good, the delivery there.
There's one big important thing is before Leonard blows up, when High pulls his shirt, he notices that there's a tattoo on Leonard of the same woodpecker tattoo that High has on his shoulder. So they have the same tattoo. High looks at that with confusion, and then shortly thereafter, Leonard blows up.
Yeah.
Much debated. I think it's pretty clear. We've already kind of covered the ground that Leonard is the sort of id manifestation of High. He's everything that's bad about High, that High struggles to
suppress or quell or overcome.
Yeah. And you get the sense that he symbolically, by blowing up his lesser self in Tex Cobb, Leonard Smalls, that he has turned a corner, if you will, onto a road to living a better life.
Yes,
and his dream reflects that.
Yes.
Right, but so, and not just his dream reflects that, but his actions after this reflect that, because they decide they're just going to go ahead and take Nathan Jr. back. Because they've also decided that basically they're not going to stay together, High and Ed, that is, and they're gonna take Nathan Jr. back and just kind of leave him there and then go. But as they are kind of looking down and reflecting upon their adventure with Nathan Jr., Nathan Sr. comes in, and but Nathan Sr. is not really upset with them.
No.
He's like, well, you brought him back, no harm done, I guess.
Yeah, so it said on the posters, no questions asked or something like that. He doesn't realize they're the ones who took him yet.
Right. Well, and
eventually,
he still thinks it was the biker.
Right. Well, because he at first was going to say, well, I'm going to give you the money.
Yeah.
Let me go get the money for you.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, sir. We were the ones who, basically.
Well, when he sees them and how they are with little Nathan Jr.
Because Ed says, let me look at him one more time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but he offers some sage advice. Basically, when they say that they're going to split up or bust up, I think is actually what High says. He's like, well, that's about the stupidest thing I've heard. And he says, basically, that, they should stick together, keep together, and maybe eventually science will catch up to where, because as he put it, it sure as hell caught up with a vengeance to the Arizonas.
And I think the sagest of his advice there is like, you may not see good in yourselves, but you brought my kid back.
Yeah.
There's something good in both of you.
Right.
Like, that's something to build on. Right. And I think that's the most important thing he says to them. Letting them off the hook is great. Probably nobody else in the known universe would do that.
Well, especially because
really
he's such a hard ass earlier on in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he talks about it. It's like, it's my way or, basically get fucked,
But also.
What is it, boot up your ass? Is that his thing?
I think.
Yeah.
Get your butt kicked. I'll kick your butt.
But his understanding comes from the fact that him and his wife fought for years to have children too.
Right.
Like he understands that aspect.
Right. He knows where they're,
let them off the hook.
Right. He knows where they're coming from. And I mean, they care enough about each other and his son to bring the son back, you know. So yeah, they can't be all that bad. And yeah, so basically Hi and Ed go home, and Hi has one more dream in which his children and their children come to have dinner. It looks like it's something like Easter or Thanksgiving or something.
And they have the welcome home kids sign up. It's so funny.
Yep. And they are just an old happy couple that get to live out all of their greatest dreams, despite it not being so cheery in the present.
Yes, that and the fact that Glenn told one too many Polak jokes.
To a cop named Kozlowski.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he gets and he's telling the joke, and then it reveals the name, and then you see him like pull out the pen to write the to write the ticket. That's right. That's all it was a ticket.
I like that they follow Lil Nathan Jr. his life from afar. They send him anonymous Christmas presents. They send him to football one year, and he becomes a football star.
Yeah,
in college, and I just think that's sweet.
Yeah,
a little sentimental.
That's it. What I love about the Coen brothers is that almost all of their work is endearing in some way, even when it's wacky and out of left field. I can't really say Blood Simple is very endearing, but a lot of the later work is like super endearing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you could say,
like even Big Lebowski for its.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, the thing is about Blood Simple is that the right person won at the end of that. The one person who technically didn't do murder won in the end. The others, I mean, like, yeah, she cheated on her husband, but compared to
she
murder,
didn't do anything funny, Jeff.
Right?
Yeah. Anything funny?
Yeah, compared to murder, that's hardly anything. So yeah, I mean, it's endearing in the fact that, you know, at that time she could have very easily have turned out to be bad or been killed. So yeah, so there's some endearment there, but also, but yeah, it's not like this or you know, some of the other. Like, because even with Fargo, if I remember correctly, the endearment comes from just how much you like the goofy characters, you know, and that they, you know,
the endearment in that one certainly comes from Frances McDormand and her husband.
100%.
Yeah. So it's, you know,
we'll get there, right? We're gonna get
there. We're gonna get there. We're getting there. We'll get there. But no, it's no, this is something that reminds me of, I will always say the best episodes of The Simpsons will have something that's incredibly funny, but also land on a somewhat, whether mildly or very touching landing of the episode, where
like that I don't even believe in Jeebus episode.
Well, that's not one that comes to mind, but
Elmo knows where you live, Jeff.
But no, I mean, like,
that's just my favorite episode. That is my favorite episode.
No, but yeah, I know what you're saying. But like, there have been some of the best like episodes of The Simpsons over the last couple of years. It's not been the show it used to be, but the best ones have ended on a way that you can see they still care about the characters and they still have something to say, and they are almost, it feels like it's coming to a conclusion. Like, we've wrapped up this story here with this nice little touching thing. Like they did something for Miss Krabappel as kind of a one last tip of the cap to Marsha Wallace, since she passed away a few years ago. And it was like, okay, they're putting away that story for Flanders, so that when the show comes to an end, there's no more loose ends. And this kind of has that same feeling. All of the funny stuff happened, but there's a nice little tie up of the loose ends and it's all the heart that is left behind to tie up. And that always that's something I always like quite a bit in stories like this.
I cannot disagree. It very much, the idea of the film resonates with me, even though it's a goofy comedy.
Yep, and that's when you know you've got a good comedy. You know, is that it does touch you in some other way. I mean, even to a certain extent, Airplane and Naked Gun find ways to touch you, even though it is wildly, you know, comedic in its, you know, there are things that when you're done you reflect back fondly on it, and that's what a comedy should do.
Well, you got me with those. I mean, I'd watch those for the rest of my life, or like just always watch Naked Gun forever.
Yeah.
And
well, the three of us have done it at a bar. so
yeah,
so we've done it. We've done the thing.
Yep.
So this is it's hard for me to think of any of the other Coen Brothers movies that I have seen. I don't know if I like them as much as this one, even though I know this is not their best one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out, because we have more to come. Anything else from you, Mr. Jason? Damn it.
No.
Should I explain that joke? Because it's pretty stupid. But
you could just call me damn it. That's fine.
Okay.
It's what Jason has showing up on Zoom. Long story short, it never shows his name, so he got mad at it.
So next week we have a movie that falls very much into the middle of the Coen tone spectrum with Miller's Crossing. This is where it feels very much like they take a bit of a turn back toward the dramatic noir sort of tone, but this one is much more imbued with the quirkiness that they would come to be known for in smaller doses, in little brush marks, rather than a whole movie of it, which is what Raising Arizona was. So this is where you really start to see the Coen brothers start to find a balance in their work, and
the real voice, right? The real voice that carries forward.
I think so. I think it's their I think it's just a restraint on both spectrums, right? That they start to show. It's a maturing of their sensibility,
right?
And I love this movie. On most days, this is my favorite Coen Brothers movie. So I'm very excited to get into the nitty-gritty on Miller's Crossing next week.
Absolutely. And just a short note, Stephanie's favorite movie, that's my wife, for those who don't know, is Goodfellas. She loves the good gangster movie. And I don't think she's ever seen Miller's Crossing. So I'm really looking for it. And I've watched it on the occasion, late nights, you know, a glass of bourbon or whatever. But I love this movie too. And I'm really looking forward to her.
Gets me every time.
Yeah, her take on this. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're looking forward to Steph's take on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see how she deals with a gangster movie that isn't so heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's got those elements, but it does what the Coens do so well, and why I liken them a lot. And I don't know if you agree with this, Jason, but to Vonnegut, because they make you laugh at the tough stuff.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. It's interesting. I think the most recent, this is all stuff we're going to talk about next week, but I think the most recent season of Fargo, which I haven't finished yet, is very much a kinship with Miller's Crossing, which is
agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, next week, Miller's Crossing, we're going to get into it, and it should be fun. And Jeff, what do you got? What do you got going on in the other worlds?
Yeah. So let's talk about some other stuff. Wednesdays, that's when you can find the episodes of Film Seizure, including that episode of Miller's Crossing. Just go over to filmseizure.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Film Seizure. We are there. Also on the filmseizure.com. We have Monster Mondays, and that's my little monster show on Mondays. This week, or this upcoming episode, is Kong Skull Island, one of the very best movies I've ever covered on Monster Mondays.
It has to be, right? I mean,
Oh,
it has to be.
sure.
It's one of the best monster movies I've seen.
Yeah, it's
good.
fantastic.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It is a damn fine, fun movie. It's no Kong 76, but it's good in its own right. But both of those, not only are they found on the website, but you can also find them on the various places that we are found, like SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify. We are also have that on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just, again, search for Film Seizure if that's how you want to take in our listening. One thing I didn't mention last week, if you do like what we do, you can buy us a coffee at the website Coffee. So go to www.ko-fi.com. Coffee.
Ko-Fi.
Ko-Fi / Film Seizure. So ko-fi.com / Film Seizure. You can donate and, buy us coffee.
Buy us coffee.
That'll be good.
That'd be nice of you. We'll say thank you to you on an episode.
Yes, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We will at some point. This week on my website, bmovieanima.com, I have The Severed Arm. That's a fun little mystery exploitation horror. Some shady characters in that movie, but you can read about that at bmovieanima.com. You can also follow bmovieanima on Facebook and Twitter. Search for that. You can also subscribe to the B-Movie Enema YouTube channel. Before too long, we'll be getting into season 2 of B-Movie Enema, the series, but you can catch 12 of the 13 episodes at YouTube on the B-Movie Enema channel. The 13th also on bmovieanima.com. I think we've done it. We've done it. I like what we've done.
We've ate shy McDone it.
Thank you, Jason. I was about to say that.
I beat you to a pun.
I love it.
That is surprising.
I have 14 years of dad experience.
I only get to talk to cats.
No, that's good. I like it. Obviously, I like it if I was going to say it.
Yeah. Until we see you at the Miller's Crossing, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.